Mike, you ready?
Born ready.
All right. Top 5 quarterbacks who got too much credit. Number 5, Troy Aikman. Way too much credit. Emmitt Smith, Alvin Harper, best offensive line ever. Michael Irvin, the playmaker. Get out of here, Troy Aikman. Number 4, Matthew Stafford. Probably should have won the Super Bowl. The Bucs should have intercepted that pass. Brady would have won another Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford got way too much credit for the Rams winning that Super Bowl. Do it in Detroit. Number 3, Joe Namath. The most overrated quarterback in the history of the NFL. Broadway Joe.
It's not a bad list, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Joe Namath, 48% winning percentage.
He shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he's overrated. He's terrible. Hawk agrees with me so far, Mike?
I'm with you.
All right. Here we go. Number 2, Terry Bradshaw.
What?
Okay.
The Steel Curtain, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, John Stallworth, Rocky Blyer, Mike Webster. They had it all.
But he won 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah. They won 4 Super Bowls. Exactly. Right.
Joe Green.
Jack Ham.
He mentioned that already.
Johnstown native, Jack Ham.
There you go.
But who do we think his number 1 is?
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts from Today's Show.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, it's not. Jalen Hurts is not. He's quickly approaching this top 5 list. It's the John Elway that won 2 Super Bowls at the end of his career.
There we go.
It's not, by the way, safe to be stretching the same side for 17 minutes. Like, you should probably switch or just stop.
You should come back
Just come back into
I
the
feel
studio.
like that's mostly his quad he's stretching, too.
He's not stretching anything. He's not even leaning. He's leaning backwards. I think his butt is, like, on the back of that chair.
He's stretching out the cigarette pack in his back pocket.
He's doing that thing.
They're in my bag.
You're parsing out a particular couple of seasons. Like you're with some of these guys, you're zeroing in on parts of their career where they're overrated.
Like Namath. Yeah, sure.
Are you questioning his methodology?
How does that hip feel?
Oh, the hip feels great. Mike, I'm coming back. I also have top 5 quarterbacks who didn't get enough credit.
Okay, we'll get that in studio. Be careful. Hey, Mina.
Hi. Good morning.
Welcome. Good morning. Welcome back, Mina Kimes, host of the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. It's great to have you here. Our friend Andrew Hawkins is in studio with us, and Dan is out sick, which is why Stugotz was out. Although if Dan were here, it'd probably be more likely that Stugotz would be out on the couch stretching out. It's good to see you, and we're having a bit of a Jalen Hurts debate filled with zero logic from Stugotz's end.
Okay.
He thinks he's a total byproduct of his offensive line and the weapons, and he thinks he's incredibly overrated. Can you diffuse this take?
Micah Parsons said it.
Okay, I saw that. Yeah, Micah Parsons gave our morning shows like 8 segments worth of content. I noticed this when I woke up.
It's all it takes.
It's funny too how like this happened this summer. I don't know if you guys remember, but like I think like there was one anonymous quote about Patrick Mahomes. There, like it was like an anonymous scout in a survey said Patrick Mahomes isn't that great. And we launched into like it was like that scene in the Avengers where everybody comes together, you know, like the tape grinders, the film nerds, the former players to defend Patrick Mahomes. But it was really just like one anonymous guy. I engaged in it. I'll admit it. But like I feel like Hurts is the MVP favorite right now. But now that we've got something to latch on to defend him, Micah Parsons gave us the foothold to talk about how underrated and great he is. Okay, so Stugotz, you're not there's a kernel of truth in your deranged thinking as usual.
Thank you.
Which is obviously Hurts is in one of the best situations of certainly in the NFL this year, but also like recent memory. Like just everything around him is so great right now. It's best offensive line in football, incredible passing game, everything, the play calling, all of it is really good. That said, I do think we're at a point now where you've seen him win so many different kinds of ways in different games, which is one of my favorite things about the Eagles, the variance in their offensive approach. And you've seen improvements that are clear, like in a vacuum, separate from his circumstances. It's a lot easier to throw with anticipation, knowing that A.J. Brown is on the receiving end of it, but he's also throwing with anticipation, which is not something he did consistently his first year. So I've been really impressed by his progression as a quarterback.
I feel like for me, the reason I'm doing it is people are doing it to Tua, but they're not doing it to Jalen Hurts. And so I just wanted to be fair. That's all. You're doing it to Tua.
I'm doing. Oh God, we're gonna. Are we doing it now?
Don't answer. Don't answer.
I thought we were gonna ease into this part of the conversation.
We're here. I mean, we don't have to if you want to stay away from Tua.
Well, the last time I was on this show, it was after week 1 of the season. Dolphins didn't play well, and I was skeptical of Tua. And Dolphins fans made a bunch of videos about me like a few weeks ago. Obviously, not the recent stretch. And in some of these videos, they were including clips from that saying, it's clearly Halloween and she's still doubting him. And I had to reply, no, they just dress like that all year. Dan was wearing like a costume. I don't remember what it was, like a wrestling costume or something. I think Tua, I've been a little bit hyperbolic at times talking about his situation because I think the offensive line is still not great. So I'll say that about Tua. It's not comparable to what Jalen Hurts has.
Right, he's had no time the last couple of weeks. Like, people are trying to find reasons for why and they played really good teams and really good, at least in San Francisco's case, a really good defense. And so the last 2 weeks have not gone well for Tua, but I think the Tua we saw the first, 9 weeks or so was more representative of the Tua we'll see moving forward than the one we've seen the last 2 weeks.
I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. Like, we watched them feast on bad defenses for a while, and then we saw them now run into San Francisco, I think is the best defense in the NFL, and then a Chargers defense that had a really good game plan against them. Down the stretch, they're playing good teams: Bills, Patriots, Jets. The Jets defense, Stugotz.
So good.
Holy shit, the Jets defense is so good. I just love watching them.
I know, but Mina, we're still a quarterback away. I mean, it's so Jets. They got every other position right, but not the quarterback.
But they did the most important thing that a lot of teams are always too afraid to do, which is actually move on from the bad quarterback. True. Like, so many teams ride that out longer than they did. So,
right.
I mean, at least be happy about that. But yeah, when I say the truth lies, they're going to the playoffs. They're going to play hard defenses. They're going to play cornerbacks who can, approximate what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, teams with good linebacker duos. So it's going to be more challenging than it was. And it's incumbent upon both Mike McDaniel and Tua to come up with some adjustments.
So, Mina, we spoke before the season. You obviously know I'm a Mike McDaniel fan. And we had a brief discussion about what I thought he was going to do when he got to the Miami Dolphins. From your perspective, what's the percentage breakdown of the credit for the season the Dolphins have had so far between Tua and Mike McDaniel?
Good question.
I got to throw in the wide receivers because so much of what Mike McDaniel does is also based on their unique skill set, and I think it's a split. It's a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split to me. Okay. I know. Is that a cop-out answer?
That is a very boring answer, Mina. I'll be honest with you.
You know it's a boring answer.
Okay, Stu, edit it. Do what you used to do. What should I have said?
Well, listen, for the way you should say that is it's a perfect, because I believe that you feel this way, okay? Mike McDaniel learned under the master Kyle Shanahan, okay, and might be better than the actual master, might actually be a better coach. In fact, perhaps McDaniel was the one who propped up Shanahan when he was in San Francisco. Maybe he's the genius, and Tua is thriving in that offense, and it was Mike McDaniel who told me and Dan Le Batard, when they told me Tyreek Hill was available, I said, take everyone on my roster. You can have everyone, because I knew how good of a fit he would be with Tua in my system, in my offense. Not Tua's offense. He called it his offense. So I would say 80%, okay, McDaniel, 20% Tua. That's the way you do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that breakdown either.
Yeah, I don't really agree with anything
you can't go
you said,
third,
including the
third.
pronunciation of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that's me. I mean,
I want to do more percentage breakdowns. Mina, over the next 5 years, between the 3 Alabama quarterbacks, Tua, Jalen, and Mac Jones, what percentage of those quarterbacks are you taking over the next 5?
Get Mac out of here.
What percentage of them? I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is the guy out of those 3. Although,
90%
I've been really
Jalen?
impressed.
You got to break it into 3s. You already broke it into 3s. Now I want to see your 3.
She's going to go 33, 33,
Don't give me 33. You can't give
I'll
me
go
33
70
answer.
Jalen, 32. How about that?
Oh, no Mac love.
I can't give
See
any.
what you've done, Patricia?
He's a clear third there. Hawk, I want to hear your thoughts on so okay. It has to have been fascinating for you as a former wide receiver watching the way the Chargers played those Dolphins skill players last week. And I think now I'm really excited to see this next matchup from a coaching perspective, because what Mike McDaniel did was build this beautiful machine.
Yep.
Right. The first part of the season, and what the Chargers did in its simplest form is throw a little grit into the machine. I'm very curious to see what his counters are.
Yeah.
Because I think it's actually it's pretty challenging. Like, I was surprised he didn't run a little bit more versus LA or stick with it. But there's there's other buttons that they can push. Like, what do you think might happen this coming week?
You know, I think and I was saying this earlier in the show, I think that's what I trust Mike the most at, is adjusting as people caught on. And I think what you're seeing is a little preview of what's going to happen next year. We talk about it with backup quarterbacks. We talk about it with rookies quarterbacks when they come in and they ball. And then their second year, it's tougher because defenses have a whole offseason to find your tendencies. We didn't see this. We didn't expect that. I think San Fran and the LA Chargers, specifically Staley, who's also very privy to that style of offense of the Shanahan system, those two teams have a jump on Mike McDaniel and how he calls plays and how to attack it. So I think that's why the last 2 weeks have been hard. I think they bounce back the remainder of the season, but I think next year you're going to see a lot of teams pick up on some of the things Mike did well early this season and potentially the back end, and that'll be the tough part for him. But again, I trust his ability to adapt, probably better than anybody I've ever coached for or played for.
That's a really good point about the two defensive coaches, D'Amico Ryans being the defensive coordinator for the Niners and Brandon Staley having an intimate knowledge of Shanahan offenses. What I found fascinating about the Staley defense is, you know, when he was with the Rams as their defensive coordinator, they basically ran the Fangio system, which is really good at countering what some of the most popular offenses in the NFL. But what he has done this year, shifting way more man coverage, and then in this game, obviously, this has been talked about ad nauseum, playing press man, that's totally different from the Fangio defense. Like, he has basically come up with the next counter to fight this particular offense. I thought he deserved a ton of credit this week.
Absolutely.
It looks like he wants to get in this conversation.
Hey, Mina, it's Billy.
Hey.
I want to try to settle things once and for all, because this has been kind of like an ongoing thing this season. So you have praised the Lions' offense this season.
Yeah.
Just this Monday, Tony came on and he said, haters may not want to hear this, but the Lions have the best offense in the NFL. And this is probably the third or fourth things that the two of you have agreed on. And Tony has come out and said that you are stealing his takes.
I don't know if I came out and said you were stealing my takes. I did not say that.
It's kind of what you said.
Well, I don't think they're the best offense in the NFL, so that was never my take to begin with. So you can have that one, Tony.
Thank
don't
you.
worry. It's your sole intellectual.
All I'm saying is that at all three levels of the offense, the running game, the offensive line, the receivers, like, they're really good. And Jared Goff seems to be doing very well. Right? Like that's all I was trying to say. They're the best offense in football right now.
Well,
you're saying
the same thing. The specifics of that aren't important. It's just, it's happened on more than one occasion. So I just kind of want to.
Could it be that great football minds are thinking the same things?
I just want to ask you directly, because you've been accused multiple times. Have you been stealing Tony's takes from Tony's top five? Because he said it on more than one occasion.
Well, I didn't know Tony's top five was a thing.
That's also not true.
I'm sorry.
That's also not true, because when you said something was in the water, something was brewing in New York, I had said that a couple days prior to that. So,
are you calling her a liar?
No, I'm not calling her a liar.
I don't think I said that.
I'm not calling her a liar. I'm just saying that she's known about it because we had roughly the same take in week 3.
It's possible she's not aware of what you're doing.
No, she was aware because she replied to me on Twitter.
She's made that clear.
She's aware. She replied to me on Twitter, which makes her culpable. I have the hold on. I got the receipts. Hold on, I got to go back.
Now going through
because Stugotz every week.
Come up with that take and must have been stolen from Tony.
Every week, Stugotz gives me my top 5 that he writes down for me. So I just got to find out when something was in the water.
Like top 5 what though?
I think so. I think it was week 7.
Tony's
top 5.
Tony's top 5.
It was week
just
7.
Anything.
Yeah.
You listen. You get it.
Oh
you
no,
steal from
it's
him.
I don't know.
According to him.
Stu, you didn't write down what week this was, but I've got number 5 AFC East best division in football, so you can kind of go back on that one. Number 4, something's brewing in New York, and I think that was week 3 because I have
Which New York
right
was
after
that?
The smoking gun.
And was it correct?
Which New York?
Well, no, I just said both New Yorks. So at that point, I think both
Something
teams
was
were 4-0
brewing in
maybe
New
or
York,
3-0, whatever it was. Yeah.
So the allegation, if I understand correctly, is that I used the same verbiage.
I think that there was something close to you said that. Yeah, I said. Yeah.
The allegation at the time was the allegation at the time very directly was Mina hears what I'm saying and she's stealing my take.
She said something about brewing, and I had obviously cornered the brewing market on Monday, and then she said something about brewing. I think maybe on Wednesday. So I'm just saying there was
brewing. I'm not brewing.
There was also number 3 that week. Things are broken in Arizona.
Wow.
Number 2.
I just want to understand here.
Yes, we all do.
It's early in the season, praising the New York teams who had surprisingly good records, and then mid-season saying things weren't going well in Arizona. You're claiming
No, that was the same week.
Ownership. Oh, pardon me. Okay.
Yeah, that was the same week.
Okay. Those just seem like simple observations of fact to me. I don't. Not to discredit your top 5.
No,
with common sports radio language, by the way, brewing.
Well, how about this, gang? So I just searched on Twitter Mina Kimes brewing to see if there was anything to this, and I found this from May 22nd, 2020. So there was a poll question saying, "Are Rich Eisen and Sedano right now the Rudy and Hoosiers stink?" I don't know what that means. Oh, right, that Rudy and Hoosiers stink was the question, right?
No, they're not right, but go on.
And then Mina replied, and I quote, Tony, and this doesn't look good for you, "Feels like a top 5 list is brewing."
Wow.
So it seems like Mina came up with brewing and top 5s together, and yours didn't debut until this year.
Huge.
Yeah. Mina, I have a question for you. Geno Smith. That's the question. Yeah.
My answer is yes. I'm Geno pilled. I know he had a rough outing last week, although guy was offside, so one of the interceptions shouldn't have counted. But I love his story. I love his attitude. I love what he stands for. I love the way he plays. Like, setting aside all of the underdog and overlooked and all of that, he has great quotes.
You
by the way.
that underdog?
Great
Okay,
soundbite.
sure.
Right.
Well, he's good.
Yeah.
His story is actually true, unlike Rudy's. And yeah, it's like he plays like he's playing with house money, which is ironic because he's probably in line for his first real big contract this year. But he's so aggressive throwing downfield. It's just really fun to watch. I mean, Stugotz, not to stab the wound a little bit, but if he was the quarterback of the Jets, you guys would be like a legit contender right now.
Yeah, like 2 seed, 3 seed. You're right. Yes. No, it stings, Mina. Thank you for bringing it up.
Mina, I want to ask you something about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, because I was shocked to learn that Jacoby Brissett was actually top 10 in QBR, and he actually hadn't been playing that bad, even though I guess
he was playing great.
Well, great. I think if
Great's
you're just
a little strong,
great strong, just because he's made 2 big mistakes that have potentially turned wins to losses. So when you look at great, like for instance, his decision making in that Chargers game really put the Cleveland Browns in a difficult spot. However, the stats over the course of a full season are quite impressive considering the expectation. And then Deshaun Watson gets plugged in, and he looks like a guy who has not played football in a couple of seasons. Are they going to look back with regret at that decision?
I think it's too early to tell with Watson, obviously. He's, like you said, he hasn't played in forever. We've seen 6 quarters? Or, I mean, I guess a couple games now, but he hasn't played like a ton. Right, he started 2 full games. So it's kind of too early to tell. With Brissett, from obviously a strictly football perspective, from Brissett, I thought the first few games he was making a lot of bad decisions, but he really ironed that out as the year went on. And his last 5 or 6 games or so, he looked excellent, which was I'm sure Andrew has thoughts on this. I thought the opposite was going to be true. I thought the Browns defense was going to have finally figured it out because they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball, and that the offense would be bad, and thus setting up perfectly for Watson to come in and elevate the offense. And instead, the reverse was true. Like, they lost. Most of the games they lost was because of their defense with Jacoby Brissett, not Brissett. He, I thought, played some of the best football of his career those final few games. It was, I mean, he's more like Rudy, I feel like, than anyone in the NFL. So yeah, I don't know about the regret thing, but obviously the way he was playing is better than how Watson has been playing thus far.
Do you think Brissett, is he your front runner for the Geno Smith Award that they're going to create for the quarterback who gets to bounce back and be a starter next year?
I think he's having too many looks. I've been thinking about that. Like, who are the other like Geno Smiths out there? Right? Like,
you got to go away for like 6 years and come back and have an MVP type season. Like that's
it's
what
like Brendan Fraser, you know. Like,
Baker Mayfield's going to win that.
It's Fraser. That's a fun.
You just know too. Like watching Geno, every backup now is like, yo, that could be me. If they just gave me a shot, that could be me. I could be Geno Smith, and it's probably not true.
They should watch Rudy. They should watch Geno, the movie.
Mina, I said earlier, like last week, that Russell Wilson is playing his way out of the Hall of Fame. Not many have done it, but I feel like Russell is doing it. Like, Mina, did you see this? There's no way you saw this coming, right?
No. He struggled a fair amount his last 2 years. He was really up and down his last 2 years in Seattle, and some of it really started about like halfway through the 2020 season. And I thought he was pressing. This was like the whole thing when defenses started playing too high against Seattle. He was still pushing the ball downfield and not checking down. It was a lot. There was just so many three and outs. But what concerned me, and I think this is what concerned Seattle and why they didn't give him the contract or why they did the trade in the first place, was they've believed, and I think we're seeing this to be true, that the decline in his mobility would impact his game. Andrew, cover your ears because I'm about to slander short people.
I know.
Russell Wilson's game has always been predicated on escaping the pocket because he has trouble seeing the middle of the field. And I think what we're seeing now is when that escapability is lost a little bit, you lose those explosive plays, and he's been somewhat limited as a quarterback. And so there were glimmers of it in Seattle, but it's the escalation of it, Stu. I didn't see it being this bad.
That hurts. Is he a system quarterback?
No, because there is no system with him. He is this. You can't call an offense for him. This was another thing I think that frustrated people in Seattle. And by the way, I don't mean that as a total derogative, because for years it didn't matter because he was so magical, right? Like making plays outside the pocket and scrambling. But you can't just like plug him into an offense and expect him to execute it. It's just not his style of play. It's interesting because this was what I praised about Tua, by the way. It was lost in the obsession with my slander. Is he's also pretty diminutive, but he is good at throwing over the middle of the field. And like Drew Brees can do it, but that's pretty unusual among short quarterbacks. I'm sure, Mike, you can speak to Baker Mayfield's unwillingness to do so in Cleveland.
Well, thank you for the vine. I'm going to take it. Baker Mayfield won NFC Offensive Player of the Week under extraordinary circumstances. And Sean McVay, given his reputation, this seems like a good spot for him, despite no Cooper Kupp and a lack of talent. Was this just a nice little story for Baker Mayfield? Is this something that could be sustainable for him? Because in that second half, he looked good, and there was a lot of big-time throws that he made.
Here's the thing about Baker. He has a number 1 overall pick arm. If he has the opportunity, he will hit that go ball and throw the prettiest one you've ever seen. The problem is, I think sometimes his play under pressure. And so I think that's going to be an issue for them going forward, especially since he's playing behind probably the worst offensive line in football.
With Baker Mayfield, for me, he thrives best, and you know this, Mike, as a former Browns fan, when you expect nothing out of him. You remember when he went in with the Jets when they were like winless and he had to, that's the moment that Baker Mayfield waits for, he yearns for, and you get the best out of him. The problem becomes when the expectation sets in and when people are expecting you to do the things that a first overall pick should do, bare minimum. Can he deliver in those moments?
He's been really difficult to evaluate because he's had such dramatic peaks and valleys in his play. And the peaks and valleys somehow correlate with the expectation level. The valleys are when the expectation is highest. When he played his best ball his rookie season, yes, he was a number 1 overall pick, but nobody has ever succeeded as a number 1 quarterback taken by the Cleveland Browns. And he came online despite bad circumstances and a bad coaching staff. And then when Odell Beckham Jr. got hurt, people thought that offense would go south. And then Baker Mayfield led the Browns to the playoffs and won at Pittsburgh. And it seemed as though he was worthy of that number 1 pick, and we had a true career going.
I think you figured out the solution, which is just every time the expectations get high, he needs to be cut and then picked up by a shitty team, kind of like a bar rescue kind of quarterback where he gets brought in when no one's expecting anything and then has like an incredible performance and then goes on to his next team.
Yeah, I mean, we joke around, but that's a like real thing from a mentality standpoint. He is like a perpetual walk-on, another Rudy reference here for everybody. But he has that mentality of like he wants to be. He doesn't do well with expectation. And I know a lot of players like that. And I would even say I was a little bit like that myself when I was playing. Like I was always best when no one expected anything because it's my norm, right? And so the moment where it's like, oh, okay, well now you need to do this. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not support. What is this? I don't like
this. Mike, you remember I did a cover story on him for ESPN after his great rookie season, and he was like, nobody believes in him. I was like, dog. Everybody believes in you right now.
Yeah,
you were the number one overall pick, and I wonder if like it has to match up with his reality for it.
Well, on Thursday it certainly did. Nobody expected
anything
out of him, and he showed you why. It's still surprising that only one team put a claim on him, considering his price tag, and it was a team with one of the more dire quarterback situations. But Sean McVay is this quarterback wizard, right? And I don't know if he stays there, but
Goff seems to be doing just fine without him.
Right. The vibes around Baker Mayfield are good for the first time in several years.
Oh, Stu, I want to coax you into a take. You think the Rams wish they never did the trade and they had Jared Goff?
Well, what I've said is they won the battle, but the Lions appear to be winning the war. How about that? Huh?
I don't think they can unless the war ends with a Lions Super Bowl win.
Well, it might, the way Goff is playing. I mean,
there's an interesting question here because somebody asked me about this on Twitter the other day. Like, do you think the Lions ultimately won the trade? And I was like, nah, the Rams won a Super Bowl. They wouldn't have won the Super Bowl without Matthew Stafford, right? However, it's like as a fan, and you should always want a Super Bowl as an organization. I'm talking about as a fan. Would you rather have one Super Bowl and then like years of wandering in the desert, or a decade of sustained greatness and always being in the mix?
Do you win a Super Bowl in the second scenario?
No.
Then you want the Super Bowl.
I don't know. Do you?
As a Jet fan, I will tell you I want the Super Bowl. Yes.
You do.
You want? I mean, I can speak to that as a Cubs fan.
Yeah.
You got one World Series out of that team. It could have and should have been a dynasty, and it wasn't. But I wouldn't trade anything for that World Series.
But you have fandom.
But I don't want to be Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. I have no interest in that. I want to win a Super Bowl, you know?
Yeah. Which one builds more fandom in LA as the Rams are trying to cement themselves in this space where it's really hard to get people to go with this team and show up for every game when they have so many options to do things? Is it 10 years of greatness, or is it that one Super Bowl? Because right now,
that's the business question.
People don't care about the Rams as much.
It depends on the
It's
fan
a good
base,
question, though. It's really reasonable.
Business.
But it depends on the fan
you
base.
want the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, it depends. Have you won Super Bowls already, though?
Yeah.
Like as a Steelers fan, you want sustained excellence, don't you?
Yeah. I would think so.
Well, it's weird for you to ask that question because you're Mr. Rings.
How about you as a Bears fan?
Right.
I'm also considering as a Clemson fan.
Wait, Mina, you've seen enough of Zach Wilson. That's it. He's done. He's not good.
Yeah. I didn't
Jesus
think coming into the
Christ.
season.
Sorry,
it's not
Stugotz.
very high on him. I think I mentioned this on Twitter. Like Mike White is. Look, I don't know if he's going to be any good, honestly. As a franchise quarterback, but watching him against the Bills, it was such a parallel to when he played them last year and totally imploded. And I was like, damn. He got better, which is rare in the NFL because unless you're a first-round draft pick, you don't usually get that opportunity to improve as a quarterback.
Right.
But he actually is playing a lot better than he did last season. If he had been the quarterback all year long, you'd be in the playoffs, no question.
I know. This is all very depressing. Mina, we love you. We miss you. Thank you for the time. We probably took too much. I'm sorry.
Check out the Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny, too. It's one of the best podcasts out there. Mina, thank you so much for joining us.
I miss you guys. Fins up.
You down.
Come on, man.